What's up, everyone? Welcome to episode 216 of the RRBG podcast. This podcast is a proud member of the Podbelly Network. Go to podbelly.com and check out all the amazing shows we have on our network, including the Sofa King podcast, Robots for Eyes, Art and Jacob Do America. I mean, there's one for everything that you're into. If you're into Magic the Gathering, they got you. If you're into the occult, they got you. You're into serial killers, they got you. Everything. Go to podbelly.com, check out the list, and support the network. What's up, everyone? I'm here again to talk to you guys about Sheath Underwear. The most comfortable underwear I've ever owned in my entire life. You know, back when I was younger, I never really gave a lot of attention to what kind of underwear I was wearing. Sometimes I wouldn't even wear any underwear. But most of the time, it was awful boxers with these terrible patterns on them, all full of holes, bunched up and sweaty, creating this terrible smell. It was the worst. So this one time, I'm in a mosh pit. I get hurt really badly, and the ambulance had to come pick me up and take me to the hospital. My girlfriend at the time was riding in the ambulance with me, had to take my clothes off to set me up for the hospital, and when they take off my pants, they realize I'm wearing these awful boxers. The dudes start laughing. My girlfriend left me. That's how bad it was. And you know what I was thinking? If I was wearing Sheath underwear back then, none of that would have happened. I would have saved myself years of embarrassment, all this work I put in with this girl. Anyway, go check out Sheath Underwear. Go to sheathunderwear.com. The company was created by a U.S. Army veteran, Robert Patton. While he was out serving, protecting our rights, he discovered that he needed to come up with a better solution for underwear while you're out in a combat situation like that. It has this 2-pouch technology that separates the twig and the berries. It's fantastic. Go to sheathunderwear.com, use our promo code RRBG, and save 20% on your purchase. It's worth every single penny. If you're watching this right now and you're single, it's because you don't have Sheath underwear. This episode is also brought to you by Killcliff. My friends over at Killcliff make the best energy drink you can buy in the market today. Clean energy, none of that crap that they put in Monster or any of those Red Bulls. No sugar, just clean power for all the grind you're going to have to put in today. And if you're not grinding today and you just want to relax, they also have CBD drinks to help you recover from any injuries you may have, any kind of inflammation. Maybe you went a little too hard at the gym. CBD drink will get you right back on track. Go to their website, killcliff.com. Check out all their different flavors. My personal favorite Ignite drink is the Cherry Limeade. And in the CBD category, you have to try the Joe Rogan Special. It's the Flaming Joe Pineapple with Jalapeno. It's not that spicy. You just get a little bit of a kick at the end. It's delicious. Go to killcliff.com and tell them that RRBG sent you. This podcast is also brought to you by El Yucateco Hot Sauce. You know, I got to tell you, I've been eating a lot more Mexican food these days as I live in LA, and it's just inevitable at this point. So having a really good hot sauce at my disposal is kind of crucial. And my go-to right now is El Yucateco hot sauce. They are a staple. They come in so many different flavors. You can get the verde sauce with jalapenos, or you can get the habanero sauce. They have this special like black sauce, which is a special reserve sauce. I mean, for whatever level Scoville you can handle, I'm sure you can find yourself a sauce here. And if you go to shop Yucateco.com, use the promo code RRBG and you'll get 10% off of your purchase. This podcast is also brought to you by Saints Joints. Go to saintsjoints.com and check out all the awesome products they have there, including the new Book of Saints that comes with 4 packs of pre-rolled joints. It's this incredible, lavish, luxurious-looking gold foil stash box. The works. It's the best-looking stash box I've seen. Make sure to go pick one up before they're all gone. And also check out the new hash-infused pre-rolls. Don't forget, it's saintsjoints.com, and make sure you tell them that we sent you. In this episode, I talked to Riley McShane. Riley is the frontman for the tech death metal band Allegaeon. He's also the founder of Proponent Games, and he's the host of Metal Blade's live interview series. We talk a lot about video games, as we're both big video game nerds, especially Final Fantasy. We talk about new Allegaeon music that they're working on. We talk about the communities behind both video games and metal. We talk about the creative process. It was a really fun conversation, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Check out the band Allegaeon, and check out Proponent Games. They're putting out some quality games, and they're independent, and they need support, so check them out. And please, if you get a chance, check out our Patreon page. Go to patreon.com/RRBG and support us. Cheers.
With the rapidly approaching inception of artificial intelligence, humanity may well set the stage for its own demise. Once the exponential rate of intelligence reaches critical mass, there will be no turning back, and all of mankind will be exterminated. The human race, who for centuries have looked to the stars for answers, have always questioned whether or not God exists. She does now.
So yeah, I'm glad we finally are putting this together. I mean, you and I have been going back and forth for over 2 years, a year and a half.
Yeah, fucking long time. Real long time. So
it's fun to finally sit here and nerd out with you for a bit. I love the couch behind you, first of all.
Thank you. Yeah, it came with my wife. She
it was a bonus add-on purchase with the wife.
Yes, exactly. Came with fucking bougie ass furniture. You can see there's a fucking eagle
matching chair. Yeah,
there's a fucking hand carved eagle on top of it.
My IKEA furniture has no eagle.
Yeah, man. I would see, the thing is though, is that like I'm super into like really sleek, minimal, modernistic like design. But my wife is like completely the opposite. She wants like super bougie looking fucking like antique, vintage, loud ass, like fucking all that kind of stuff. So it's like if you go downstairs into like my like office area, everything's all like super clean and like fucking, you know, minimal. And then you come upstairs and it's just like, welcome to our Victorian parlor. So
that's good. That's good. You got to have that, the balance, right? You got to have each side of the spectrum. Yeah,
exactly.
My wife and I are both huge nerds, so it kind of works in our favor for decorating. So like everything, it's all like Zelda stuff and all my old N64 games or her old N64 games, and we just combine it together into this museum of video games.
That's amazing. I love it.
So I'm going to leave all this in. So what's up, everyone, and welcome to the RRBG podcast. I'm here with Riley McShane of Allegaeon. Am I saying that right? Allegaeon?
Yeah, Allegaeon.
Allegaeon. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I want
Close
to
enough.
say Allegaeon.
Yeah.
Has anyone ever said that? Allegaeon?
Oh, dude. That's usually the go-to. It's either Allegaeon or Allegaeon.
Allegaeon.
Or Allegaeon.
Algaeon.
Very, very few people are just like, oh yeah, Allegaeon. It's just like never the first time.
Was that intentional? I'm just to fuck
dude.
with
Okay,
people?
so the band. Fun fact: long before I was in the band, they in like 2006, I want to say, they were called Allegiance. And from what I've been told, they got hit with a couple cease and desist orders.
Okay.
From other bands called Allegiance who were like already battling over the trademark.
Okay. All right.
And so they were like, all right, how can we fix this in such a way that it like we'll never run into this issue again? And they were just like, let's just add 35 fucking vowels into it, and that's kind of what they did.
I see.
So now you have Allegaeon.
Okay.
So,
all right. You also host the Metal Blade Live series, which is cool. How did that happen? Like, did you reach out to them, or did they reach out to you?
No, they reached out to me originally to be like a third party in the Metal Blade podcast. So there's a bunch of episodes from like 2011. I mean, it might be getting that year wrong. It might be a little bit later, like 2014 or something like that. But there was a bunch of episodes that were just Ryan Williams, also known as Bart, the old bass player for Black Dahlia Murder.
Okay.
And then this guy, Vince Edwards, who is just like an artist rep guy over at Metal Blade. And so when they decided to bring it back, they were like, oh, well, let's get like a third host. So it's more of like a group podcast kind of vibe. And then we'll have a guest, and it'll be like a nice even four. It'll feel, good and conversational, a bunch of dudes hanging out. And so they hit me up, and I was like, yeah, man, I'm super down. And we did a few episodes. I want to say like, 5 or 6, maybe a little, give or take in either direction. And then things kind of started picking up over at Metal Blade again with, bands turning in their COVID albums, being like, put this out. So
yeah, I'm bored. I just wrote a whole album here.
Yeah, pretty much, right? And so they started getting a big influx of that and started becoming a little bit more busy. So they were like, hey, we can't, we don't have the hours in the day to do this podcast anymore. Do you just want to like solo host like a streaming interview series? And I was like, fucking sure. I'm already, it was less of a time allocation for me, to be completely honest, because the podcast would be, like 2 hours, 3 hours, something like that. And this Metal Blade live series is just like, 30, 45 minutes because it's in a live setting. It's got that stream vibe. It's, one-on-one, less people talking about stuff. So worked out. But it's been a lot of fun, man. I've got to talk to a lot of people that, I've learned a lot from, and it's been a really cool experience, from an artist perspective, as well as from just like a host perspective.
Or a fan even, like, if you get to talk to somebody you're a fan of,
Yeah. I talked to Devin Townsend not so long ago, and that was a huge one for me because I'd been a huge fan of him for such a long time. And of course, Murphy's Law, my ISP, my internet provider, shafted me that day. Like all of a sudden my upload speeds were like 0.2, 0.3.
Oh god.
So I'm like trying to do this live stream, and it's just choppy and unwatchable basically. So I had to like stop the interview, be like, hey dude, I'm super sorry to cut you off. I have to like fix something real quick. And I had to adjust my bitrate settings and all this stuff, but it was like the least smooth that it could have possibly been for the interview that I was like already the most nervous about. So it was, that was something. But
I was gonna ask if you had like a horror story, because I have a couple of like really bad situations that have happened on the show.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of them for sure. The tech issues, and then I had a guest who shall remain nameless for. Ooh. For the sake of me not getting in trouble, but he was pretty difficult. He was very, very much of like a downer kind of thing. And like, I do what I can to try to keep the air light and all this kind of stuff, but he's just a very politically motivated kind of guy. And, it was what it was, but it was tough. It was tough to like get through that one. 'Cause that's the thing, is that it's like, if it were just me, right, I'd be in a more of a position to be like, hey bro, could you just like shut the fuck up? Like, could you just like could you like, stop being such a dork? Like, could you just fucking come on? But it's like, I'm representing Metal Blade,
right?
You know what I mean? So it's like, I can't do something that could cause blowback on them. And especially since like a lot of my guests are like Metal Blade artists or like, industry people that Metal Blade has good relationships with. So it's like, I can't necessarily like let my poker face down and be like, hey bro, you need to stop. I just kind of got to like roll with it and like keep the party going and keep everything, trying to direct conversations away from, controversial topics and all that kind of stuff. So I think that, that particular interview took a lot for me to, do all of those things. So
people don't realize what an art form it can be to be a podcaster. A lot of people, everybody's got a podcast, but not all of them are interesting, because
that's very true.
A lot of people don't know how to hold a conversation. They don't know how to steer that like, the ship is sinking. How do we fucking make it to shore? What's happening here? I've had that a couple times where I'm just like, oh, this is terrible. Hey, pro wrestling. And you like pro wrestling? Let's talk about that instead, because
my very first podcast experience was with my old band, Son of Aurelius, and we did this thing called the Aureliacast. And like, man, I wish that I could still find the episodes of that, because it was doing super well while we were doing it. It was like on all the Apple Music charts, and like it was rad. But we had like an outline, like a page of just like, okay, this is what we're gonna like. Here's our talking points, and here's like our beats that we're going through, because it's like a bunch of dudes, drinking beer and smoking weed, just kind of shooting the shit, and it's like we had to have something to like
some kind of
reel us
structure
back in at some point. And it's just like, all right, you guys, this is getting like way too off the rails. But that structure, that ability to like steer the conversation into a way that doesn't just turn it into mindless babbling, which can happen for sure.
Oh yeah,
it's important. You never really realize how weird you and your group of friends are until you do a podcast with them.
Yeah, man. I mean, I usually have I'll have in front of me my notes that I, from research that I've done of whoever the guest may be. And then I always pull up the wiki page and the social media page and some other stuff just to have that. But I also don't want the podcast to be this regimented thing. I get a lot of PR people that hit me up like, hey, the album's coming out, but can you only talk about this? And, you only have this much time. I'm like, I don't like that. I want to do a conversation. I want to have, a one-on-one with somebody. And then I have the notes in case that, the derailing happens.
Exactly.
The ship starts sinking. I'm like, whoa, wait, see here, you have on Instagram a cat. Tell me about that cat.
A lifeboat. Yeah.
Oh man, have you had a guest on the show where the technical issues? Well, I guess it's different for you because your show's live. I've considered doing the live thing, but there have been so many issues already that I'm like, just keep it recording. I'll release it later once I take a look at it, because I had an episode once where my audio didn't record at all. It was It was just the guest, and it was an important guest. It was like a big name, and I was super stoked to have them on. It was like a legend. I only had this one opportunity to talk to him. And I literally sat in my room and played the conversation and then re-recorded myself reacting to the conversation.
Oh, wow.
Because I wanted to salvage it so badly. I have to release this. So I had to I almost lost my mind. I was losing. Yeah. I was just laughing by myself. My wife's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Nope, I'm not."
Nope. That's the furthest thing from okay.
This is the worst thing that's ever happened. I don't know. I'm just talking to myself. But yeah, it's an art form for sure, and I respect that you've taken to it. It sounds like you should be doing that. Because just because you're a frontman in a band doesn't mean that you have good social skills. I've met a lot of frontmen that don't know how to talk to people.
Yeah. I mean, especially in a genre like metal, where it's like most people get into it to have an outlet because they don't have such a thing in like their social group or in their family dynamic or whatever it might be. Like most people get into metal from a performing side to like get some shit that's inside out.
Right.
So, a lot of those people might not be social butterflies.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like therapy. I've tried to explain this to some of my friends because I have friends that don't listen to metal and they're like, how can you listen to that all day? Doesn't it make you angry and violent? And I'm like, no, it's how I get rid of that.
It's like the exact opposite. It's
if I don't have that in my life, then I'm now I become a serial killer that goes out and murders people. You have to have that outlet of all these dark thoughts or whatever.
It's like a sponge is kind of how I think about it. It's like, if you're the faucet, right? And you have all this shit that's like, that's all backed up and spilling out everywhere, right? Like, you need to have some kind of sponge. Otherwise, it's just going to get everywhere and it's going to affect all these different parts of your life. And like, music of any kind really can be like that sponge, that kind of thing. But it just kind of depends, different sponges for different jobs. Like if I'm feeling like sad or something like that, I'm probably not going to go listen to brutal death metal. I'm probably going to listen to something a little bit more laid back, much as if, I had a bunch of stuck on shit on a pan. I'm not going to use a regular sponge. I'm going to use like a Brillo pad.
Right. Yeah.
But it's having those like absorbing materials is important. You know what I mean? I wouldn't try to do a sink load of dishes with my bare hands, much like I wouldn't try to, process my emotions without, something relatable. And whether that's music or art or, even just like interpersonal relationships, like those things are always there. And so it's always kind of boggled my mind when people are like, bro, how do you how do you listen to this without it affecting you negatively? And I'm just like, I don't know, man. How do you talk to your friends without it affecting you negatively. It's the same shit. Like,
my wife put together a feel good list for me. So, because I tend to have days, everyone does. Yeah. So I'll have days, and she's been with me long enough now to know, like, I don't even say anything. There's not something that happens. Like, I don't like yell, or it's just something she could see in my face. So as soon as like it starts happening, she just puts on the playlist, and there's songs there that are, no matter what or how I'm feeling, they will cheer me up.
Yeah.
Do you have something like that? Do you have songs that no matter what will cheer you up?
Oh yeah. It's strangely enough, usually like video game soundtracks, like anything that like hits me in a nostalgic kind of way.
Okay.
Or like certain TV series also will do that. It's the kind of thing where it's like, if I'm having a shitty day, I know I can always turn on like The Sopranos or something I've seen like a million times, or like Yu Yu Hakusho or some shit, like something that just like has positive.
Sopranos doesn't have positive vibes though.
I know, not positive. I mean positive, like what's the fucking word I'm looking for? Like affiliation with the memories that I have with it. Right. It's like, when I first watched that show, it was like during a time in my life that I look back on fondly. You know what I mean? It was like when I was first starting to date, my now wife, and like, I living with some super sick homies up in Santa Cruz. Like it was a mostly good time. I think I had just joined Allegaeon, or was like just about to join Allegaeon when, I was first watching that show. So it's the kind of thing where it's like, I have a lot of memories that tie in with, that show as like a positive experience.
Okay.
And then like, same thing for video games. Anything that really hits a good like nostalgic button. It's like, if I'm feeling shitty, I can always listen to like a Final Fantasy soundtrack, or like a like first or second gen Pokemon soundtrack, and like, get those warm and fuzzies. So
sure. What's your favorite Final Fantasy?
That's such a loaded question, man. I have my let me preface this by saying, like,
okay, hold on. What was your first Final Fantasy?
7 was my first one.
Okay.
7 was my first one for sure. But I feel like I should preface this, conversation by saying my entire back is a Final Fantasy like concept art tattoo. Like
nice.
It's all Yoshitaka Amano stuff. I have a Yoshitaka Amano tarot card set right in front of me here.
Nice.
I am.
Hey, look. Check this out.
Oh yes, that's Ultros, right?
Yeah, Ultros.
Yeah, Ultros. Hell yeah, yeah. I have even the ones that aren't on my back, I've got like Buster Sword with Meteor right there. This is Anima.
From 8. 10. Sorry, 10.
Yeah, from 10. I have a Moogle right there.
Very nice.
And then my whole back is Final Fantasy thing. Like, so it's by far my favorite video game series. So picking a favorite is like, who's your favorite kid kind of thing. Like
okay.
But I think I like certain ones for different reasons. Like I 7 is always going to hold a super special place in my heart because it's the first one I played. It's like what really got me into the series. I backtracked from there and played 6, which was 3 on the Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
Very similar to 7 in a lot of ways as far as like story and structure and stuff.
It's so weird that they did that with the numbers. Like, why would you skip? I guess because they didn't want to bring over the other games from Japan.
Yeah, it was because of import stuff. It was like, this is the 6th game, but it's only the 3rd one that's come out in America. Right. So like they released 1 Final Fantasy, right? And then in Japan they did 2 and 3, and then they did 4, which sold super well over there. So they were like, all right, well, let's bring it over here, and released it as Final Fantasy 2. Yeah. And then they did 5 just in Japan, and then they did 6, and we're like, okay, well, we want that one too, and then did it as 3. So in America, it goes, Final Fantasy 2, Final Fantasy 3, Final Fantasy 7, but 2 is actually 4, and then 3 is actually 6. Mm-hmm. And since then, we have them all on Game Boy Advance and DS and all kinds of different ports.
I had the PlayStation 1 collections that they did with Anthology and Mythology or something like that.
Yeah, I think it was Anthology, Chronicles, and there was one. I feel like there was one more. I might be wrong though. There's
one that was 6 in Chrono, And then there
that was Chronicles. I think I have that one sitting right next to me.
And then they had 4 and 5 on another one, I believe.
Yeah, I think that was Anthology.
Yeah.
And then I think that was it. I think they just did those 2. But yeah, it's so I did 7 and then I did 3, and then after that I played them pretty much chronologically ever since. So I've done 8, 9, 10. I didn't really do 11. I wasn't super into MMOs at that time, and by the time I was like into PC gaming, that had like 12 and 13 had already come out.
Right.
I still play 14 pretty actively.
Nice.
And I love 15. 15 gets a lot of shit because of a lot of sort of valid reasons. When it first launched, it very much met the modern game release pattern of like, this game's like 95% done. It's not quite all the way actually done. But then what they did, if you play through the story, it's centered around 4 characters. Like, your party is these 4 guys that never change. And if you play through through just the main game, there's these like chunks of time where you'll be without something, or like something really drastic will happen to one of them, and you'll just be like, what the fuck, how did that happen? And so what they did was they released these DLC things called episodes, right? So it was like, episode Gladio, episode Prompto, episode Ignis, and then I think they did episode Arden for like the main villain. Mm-hmm. And there were 2 more planned, actually. They were going to do episode Noctis and episode Lunafreya for the main character and like his like love interest character. Mm-hmm. But the team quit. The entire Final Fantasy 15 development team had quit because Final Fantasy 15 was originally going to be this game called Final Fantasy 13 Versus.
Yep, I remember that.
And they ended up canning that project. And so there was already like a bad taste in people's mouths going into 15, right? Like all these people who expected 13 Versus and then got 15 with like the same character models and all this stuff. They were like, what? So then it came out and there were these big chunks of time missing, and the battle system hadn't quite been perfected. So it was like you could just hold circle and pretty much get your way through the game.
Yeah, I didn't hate the system, but it was too reminiscent of Kingdom Hearts, which I get it because it was the same dude they brought in. I forget his name, but it was too simple. Yeah, is what I thought. Yeah.
But so the thing is, though, is that like games like that, I have always viewed as like low barrier to entry but high skill ceiling, right? Like if you wanted to challenge yourself in Final Fantasy 15, you could. The thing about it, though, that I will definitely give people is that it's like there should have been difficulty levels like there was in Final Fantasy 7 Remake. I think that was like a perfect kind of thing, is that it was like, so there's these difficulty levels, and if you want to 100% the game and get your platinum trophy, you have to beat it on the harder difficulty levels. Mm-hmm. Because then it's like similar type of thing, right? With Final Fantasy 7 Remake, you were able to pretty much just like button mash your way through battle if you were playing on easy or normal. But as you got to hard, you like had to learn, how these like different attack pairings and like how to switch between party members at what time to defeat certain types of enemies and all this kind of stuff. Like it became much more involved from a player's perspective. And 15 didn't really have anything like that. It was like, it really had to be totally up to you to be like, okay, I'm gonna switch between my party members and use everybody's like individual little skills they have, and like really use spell integrations to go against enemy weaknesses and stuff. And the other thing is that there weren't a whole lot of enemies that really like forced you to do that either. Like there were some like super bosses at the end of the game, behind those like big sealed doors and shit that you had to like play a little bit smarter during. Mm-hmm. But there wasn't really much in 15 to like force the player to like learn how to use the battle system in a really hands-on, immersive kind of way. So I will definitely give the complainers that. But I think that everything else about 15 was super magical. Like that game was super emotional.
I love this. The summons were incredible.
The summons were so sick. Yeah. And it was cool that it was like they were situational summons. Like I thought that was a really cool thing. So it's like you couldn't just cheese Ifrit all the time. Like you had to meet certain criteria within a battle to be like, okay, I'm gonna, I have this summon option pop up now. And so that was another cool thing about it. It's like, oh, I want to summon Shiva in this battle. I have to like do these certain things within the battle to get that option to pop up. So yeah, I loved the story. I loved the characters. I love the dynamic that the party has with each other. The world itself is my favorite Final Fantasy world. I want to say that it's based in, you know what? It might not be based in Ivalice.
I read something about that. There was some kind of connection there.
Yeah, so it's like, well, okay, because you have Tactics and 12 are for sure like based in the same world, like same like kind of timeline type of thing.
Yeah.
And then Type 0 HD is also in that same world. And I want to say that 15 is, but I might be talking out of my ass on that one.
I feel like there is some connection, like, but just way ahead in time or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like it follows the very like, there's a crystal and there's these warring nations and all this kind of stuff. Like, yeah, because that's the other thing about 15 is that it's like, they had the movie Kingsglaive, and then they had like the Final Fantasy 15 Brotherhood anime, and like there was like so much that went into the lore surrounding the game. And I think that's why I really like 15 and why it's like pretty high up on my list as far as my Final Fantasy experiences go, because it's like, very much like how 7 is, right? 7 had 7 and Advent Children and Dirge of Cerberus and G-Bike and like all these different things. Crisis Core, yeah, all these different things that like contributed to the lore of like the main game and the world that the main game presented. And I think they realized what a good model that was with Kingdom Hearts. Even though Kingdom Hearts kind of bummed me out because it was just like I didn't play a bulk of the games between 2 and 3. So then when I fired up 3 and started watching the opening cutscene, I was just like, what is happening?
Don't worry about it.
What is going on here?
You're all green, by the way.
Oh, that's super weird.
Do you see it?
There we go.
Yeah.
Is it still green?
No, it's not. It's green. It's fine now. That's good.
Okay.
So we were talking about...
I was going to say, I can restart on my end as well if you want me to. Otherwise...
No, we're good. I have all the audio being recorded and everything, so I'll just edit it together.
Cool.
I'll do another one of these. All right. So yeah, we were Final Fantasy. I think with 7 Remake, I think they mastered that combat system that they had in 15. Like it's similar, but I love that they integrated the old school. The menus. You can slow everything down, and I'm hoping that they take that into 16 and do something similar with it.
I would love to see 16 because 16 also looks like it's based in that like 12 Tactics Type 0 kind of timeline. I would love to see 16 be like an expansion of how 12 worked because I love 12.
Yeah, 12 was pretty good.
12 was also one of my favorites because it was like really immersive. It had, and I think that was a turnoff for a lot of people, is that it was almost too much. With like the hunts and the open world and like how super detailed the story was. It was like very reminiscent of how Tactics was presented. And I would love to see 16 kind of like continue to expand in that direction.
Sure.
Because I feel like they never really did since 12. Like 13 went back to being very linear, turn-based kind of thing, and then 14 MMO, and then 15 they were like, all right, action RPG time. So I feel like with 12 they never, 12 was kind of like the end of the like, big open world with the hunts and all this kind of stuff. And since then, you have games like The Witcher that have done incredibly well, kind of set that precedent. So it'd be cool to see 16 be more of like an open world action RPG like how 12 was, but like in a more perfected modern setting.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I meant more like the combat system. I hope the combat is kind of in that mix of action and with some, menu options. Like slow shit down for a second just so I can look at what I got and then, okay, let's keep going.
Yeah, totally.
I think the thing with 12 with me was that it was basically 11. It was a single player version of 11. I spent 2 years in 11, which was rough. I liked it, but that game was not a easy or actually fun game to play. It was kind of like I felt like I had to play it because I'm such a fan of the series, but I felt like I was working because I had to like level up certain classes just to make money or just to be able to even do dungeons because people weren't like if like for example, I had a Dark Knight and nobody wanted Dark Knights in their party, so I had to go level something else out. Otherwise, I can't do this stuff. But anyway, so it's hard to pick your favorite Final Fantasy.
It is hard to pick my favorite. I never really answered that question. I just started rambling about Final Fantasy, but you can see why it's hard for me to pick a favorite. There's so many things.
So can you pick your least favorite then? Like which one's at the bottom of the list?
Yeah, for sure. I'd say 5 is probably my least favorite one. It's just boring. It's just like there's not a whole lot that it offers. The original 3 is also kind of in there as well for me. 1 and 2 I view kind of like as like prototypes. Like, I feel like 1 and 2 were kind of like, okay, let's see how this RPG stuff kind of works. Like still very early on in like the history of video games in general. Yeah. And then 3 was like, it was okay. And then 4 was like, oh, okay, this is cool. Like this is like a cool, like, they Nintendo style RPG.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then with 5, I don't really know what happened there. They just kind of missed the mark, I guess.
Well, there's a reason.
6 came out.
There's a reason it never came to the U.S.
Yeah, exactly. It was a little too weird. And then 6 came out and it was amazing. So yeah, I'd have to say like 5 or 3 are probably my least favorite ones. If I had to give like a top 3 for my favorites, man, that's tough because it's just like. It's like I'd have to give like a top 5, like 7, 7 in no particular order, 7, 10, 9, and 15.
6 is not. I was gonna say 6 is not up there.
Yeah, 6 is in there. It's just that like I feel like if I didn't play 6 retroactively, it would probably be more like memorable to me.
Yeah,
but it's like I had just beaten 7. And then I went back and played 6 and was like, okay, it's like there's so many similarities between 6 and 7 in the way that it's like, evil villain trying to destroy the planet. You're part of a group of like, like anti-hero, like rebellion types. And like this, the villain is like a crazy, super powerful, like high up military dude. And like, there was just so many parallels between 6 and 7, and I feel like that was good at the time, right? Because you had a generation shift. You had the switch from Super Nintendo to PS1, and so it served its purpose there. But as someone who's like going back and playing through all of them, it's like this is like the same game, almost. Yeah. And
6 was my first one, so that to me is my number 1 all the time. That's why I got Ultros, because it's like. Ultros even is one of those characters in that game that he's not the main villain, but he's like a mid boss, but he's also kind of like funny and charming and like joins your party. And it's like, I love him. But 6 was my number 1. And then going into 7, it was like just my mind exploding. It's just like, oh, it's 6, but better, like visually better, because I got these giant summons flying around and doing things. I was like, oh, okay, I get it now. If you're tuning in to this podcast and you're wondering why we're nerding out so hard on Final Fantasy, Riley is you own a video game company, publishing company, yes?
Yes. Yeah. I just started Proponent Games last year in June of 2020. And
so it's not just being indulgent. I'm doing this for a reason, right?
There's a little indulgence there. Come on, let's be real. It's me and my business partner, this guy Steve Tom Sawyer. He worked for Devolver Digital and Limited Run Games, and he has a long history in the game industry. And then based off of my experience in the music industry and working with record labels and, being used to publishing and distribution agreements, it just seemed like a good fit. I've obviously super into video games, have a huge passion for them. And it's funny how it started was that, I could have never done this if the lockdown didn't happen. I should say it. I should start it with that, is that it's like I was touring super like all the time, like at least 4 or 5 times a year with Allegaeon. My other band Continuum also had like just started touring. Virulent Depravity had just started writing. Like I was very, very busy with music and still am. But when you took touring off the table, it gave me enough of a chunk of time to start looking into other stuff. And it was also like sink or swim, you know what I mean? As it was for a lot of people, because touring was also my main form of income.
Right.
So with that off the table, it was just like, oh shit, like, what are we gonna, I gotta figure something out. So it originally started as like, I'm just gonna make a game. I have this game script that I've been sitting on forever, this like visual novel 2D RPG type of thing, similar to games like To the Moon is a good example.
Okay.
So I was like, yeah, it's like, it's retro style. It shouldn't be too expensive. And I started talking to dev teams and other publishers. And what I pretty quickly learned is that they were like, yeah, if you want any publisher to be interested in this, you need to get a vertical slice. And I was like, well, what's that? And they were like, it's like a top-down, version of the game that showcases everything that's going to be in it. So you don't have to have a full game. You don't have to like have a gameplay loop, but you need to have enough of the game available so that publishers can look at it and like gauge their interest. I was like, okay, well, how much would that cost? And it was generally quoted between like $20,000 to $40,000.
Jesus.
Yeah. And so I was like, okay, well, fuck that. I'm not going to spend that kind of, because that's just like, that's such a gamble. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's like, if you're sitting on a couple $1 million, like, 45 grand, 50 grand, make a vertical slice. And if the publisher doesn't like it, then whatever. But I am not that guy. That is a very substantial amount of money to me.
Yeah.
So it was like, I'm not going to spend that kind of money on a gamble, because it's like, I make this vertical slice. What if a publisher doesn't like it? Like, what if a publisher doesn't, then do I have to continue to pay, X tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars more to get this game completed and then release it indie? And then like, I also have to worry about paying for marketing and paying for all this other kind of shit.
And an already flooded indie market,
Yeah, exactly. And so I was like, man, if those are the things that I'm going to be doing, I might as well just start a publishing company and do it for games that are already closer to that finish line so that we can have a little bit more flexibility with our budget. And then, eventually have the working capital to do my game. And so that's kind of that's how it started. Okay. And then from there, I started talking to my connections in the games industry and, started talking with Steve a little bit more closely. And, that was when we really kind of started formulating like our mission statement behind the company, which is, giving indie developers like a fairer shake than they've been given in the past, not only to indie developers, but also just like underrepresented groups. Steve is Black, and his experience in the game industry, with his Blackness intact, has been less than amicable. So it's a thing where it's like, you don't really think about what goes on behind closed doors, but a lot of these, bigger companies that started in the 70s and 80s in the gaming world are still very much, run by rich old white dudes. Yep. So, yep. Even there was even like a huge thing with Blizzard recently, because they were like, we're going to be more diverse. We're going to have a diversification program. And then like very shortly afterwards issued a statement being like, we can't afford to hire diversity. And it was just like, what? Like, and so with Proponent, we have kind of like our three pillars of, our business model is mounted on, and that's, passion, opportunity, and community, right? So it's like, we want to find people who are passionate about their games. Obviously, we're not trying to make, some guy who's like, hey, I just did an Angry Birds clone. You guys want to make some money? Like, sure. Like that stuff's like cool for what it is. It's just shovelware, cash grab kind of shit. It works for those purposes. And if there comes a point where it's like, we make a few of those games to fund the things that are like actually like passion projects, then like, so be it. But that's not what we want to set as like our precedent. So it's, passion. We want to have people who are passionate about their games, people that we can share that passion with as a publisher. move forward from there. And then the next big thing is opportunity, right? Is it's like, we not only want, passionate game devs, because most game devs are passionate about what they're doing, right? Otherwise they wouldn't be doing it.
Exactly. Yeah.
But also provide opportunities to game developers who might not otherwise get to see their project come to life. And whether that's because it's racially motivated or economically motivated or whatever it might be, those are the developers that we seek out first.
Okay.
To really give them an opportunity. And in some cases, you know what I mean? Like, it's just going to be like, oh, this guy has all the passion in the world, but he, can't code his way out of a fucking wet paper bag. Like, we're not going to sign this project. Sorry. There are other criteria that need to be met, but, passion and opportunity are like the first two big things. It's like, we want to find passionate people who need an opportunity to shine. And then from there, it's all about just community, building community around our company that then, leaks out into our games. Like, we want to ideally, within the next few years, have a stable community of followers who like know what we're all about, know what to expect from us, that when we drop a game from a developer who, has up until then been in the back of some cave somewhere, they'll be met with kind of open arms, being like, our community is your community. So that's kind of like our mission statement in general, right? So it's a little bit more detailed and in depth than just like, I started a game company because I love video games. Like, obviously,
Sure,
that's the springboard, right? But then everything that comes after and everything that we've kind of like dove into at this point is has that mission statement backing it and behind it. So,
well, I mean, It's a worthy venture, I would say, and especially nowadays where gaming has kind of become this huge thing. Like, I mean, I've been playing since ColecoVisions when I was a kid, so to me, it's always been a big thing, but it's becoming a big thing in like pop culture and in general. More people are accepting of it. When I was in high school, I was the nerd for playing video games. So now it's like, oh, look at E3 and these massive, like, you got Andrew WK doing award shows with, it's definitely grown since then. And
I mean, it's a $1 trillion industry. Like, one of the things, that I saw when going into this, was that the Q1 shift in revenue and software sales between 2019 and 2020, and granted, COVID coming on during Q1 2020 had a lot to do with this.
Yeah.
But just in software sales, there was an increase of, I believe it was like 9.2. It was like 9% increase in software sales between Q1 2019 and Q1 2020, which is like huge. You know what I mean? Like, if it's kind of thing where it's like, if you're a company and you see a 2% increase in sales, it's like company party time. Like, it's like, we're giving everybody bonuses. This is like, it's like a huge deal, especially if you're like a multi-million-dollar company. Like, 2% is a fucking lot of money. And so it was like, it was a 10.2% increase that sang to the tune of $9.6 billion.
Jeez.
And that's just in software revenue between, Microsoft, PlayStation, Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo, and then PC sales as well, like via Steam and Epic and GOG and all that kind of stuff. But that 9.6 billion figure is just the amount of money. That's just the increase amount, you know what I mean, between 2019 and 2020. That's not like, oh yeah, in 2020 games sold $9.6 billion. In 2020 games sold $9.6 billion more than they did in 2019. So it's like, it's huge, you know what I mean? And it's like, if you look at it that way, it's like, okay, well, what is 9.6 billion 10% of $96 billion? Like, it's wild. And that's just one quarter, you know what I mean? So it's like, there's so much money going around in the games industry, especially at higher levels in the top tier thing. So it would be dishonest of me to say that wasn't partially a little bit of a motivator to get into the games industry, is that just the insane amount of money that's floating around in it. So
there's money in it, but it's also, there's a lot of work. I mean, there's also a lot of when you get to those that kind of money, there's also a lot of politics. Mm-hmm. And I can imagine it's difficult for a small publishing company that just started to get their position at like an E3 or at a video game award or at a PAX or whatever it may be.
Well, I mean, it's less of a challenge to get in the door at places like that than you might think. It's just like you just have to pay for a booth, just buy a booth space.
Okay.
But those booth spaces are, incrementally priced to be more accommodating towards, it's like, oh, do you want a whole section on like this particular part of the floor? Yeah. That's going to be $1 million. Like it's, for companies like Square and, something like that, like the Square Enix booth at every E3 you go to is huge. It's like, a gigantic like thing that's got like a shop inside of it. It's got, oftentimes Nintendo will have like an entire room like off to the side of the thing. And those obviously cost a lot of money, but they're companies that have been around for a long time and made a lot of money so they can afford it. Whereas with a company my size, it would be like, oh, like give us a few grand and we'll give you a booth, but you're going to be in a row of booths,
right? A bunch of other indie
kind of off to the side, yeah, for sure. So
people have to stop and look at you. Like most of the time, they're just flying by to go see the next big, Call of Duty reveal or whatever it is, Yeah.
So it's easier to get in the door. It's just, it then becomes really up to you and your team to like really take advantage of like that networking opportunity. You know what I mean? Like go to all the parties that are being held, like go to all the events, try to sit in on panels and ask questions, try to like really take advantage of the time that you have that you're there. And I think that a lot of people don't realize, from a fan perspective, when they go to E3 to like just be at E3 and see the cool stuff, that like a lot of the events are structured around industry networking.
Oh yeah.
So, it's just all about how well you can do all that kind of stuff and the people, and, fortunately over at Proponent, we have a really solid team of people who have worked on a lot of really good games. Like I said, my business partner was with Devolver. He worked on games like The Messenger and Shadow Warrior 2 and Enter the Gungeon and all kinds of stuff. The guy who's running our PR is this guy named Zach Gunnell, who works closely with Konami and Square Enix, and he's a Suda 51's like main PR guy. He just worked on that No More Heroes 1 and 2 combo pack for the Switch. We have additional PR teams that are, have worked on like the guys we're working with right now. This PR company called Team Critical Hit, bunch of great dudes, just did the Skull the Hero Slayer release in the indie world. So we've made sure to make our team, full of as many people that will give us a little bit of a competitive advantage, right? So it's not just like a bunch of fucking nobodies starting a game company. With my history in music, I'm not a fucking celebrity by any means, but it's like I'm a little more well known in certain circles than other people might be. So it's like we have, my history in music with Steve's history in video games, and then this like team of really well experienced, well-rounded, publicity professionals and all this kind of stuff. So I think that, once conventions do come back, we'll be presented with a little bit more opportunity than some other smaller companies, just based off of the merit of the people that we've surrounded ourselves with. Mm-hmm. But you're right. There is a lot of, it's very saturated. It's what's called a red ocean in marketing terms. Is that it's like, you want to release, a big fish into a blue ocean, right? Like do a game that's super sick that not a lot of other people have done, because then, the sharks, aka the consumers, are going to just flock to it, right? But if you just throw another piece of fucking meat into this red ocean where everybody's already swimming and eating and doing all this kind of stuff, like it's not going to make much of a difference. So, we definitely want to, it's like you said, like you were saying, it is a very saturated market, the indie games community right now, especially with COVID. Being intact, it's just like everyone's releasing games. So it's, it's a challenge for sure. But I think that, cutting our teeth as a company during this time versus any other time is going to make the next few years so easy.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I wonder if E3 is going to go back to the no public model after, COVID. Just to reduce the number of people, because I remember the no public times being much better.
Yeah.
The public. I remember. I think it was 2019 or 18 that somebody stole a bunch of consoles. Like they were stealing shit from there. Like really? Are we that much? Like are we animals? Like what's going?
Yep. Yeah. That's the thing, man. Is it's like when you take something that gained notoriety for being limited access and then just open it up to everyone. You're gonna get a lot of bad shit happening. It's
it's weird. That's a weird thing, and it's such a double-edged thing, and it goes for everything because different limited releases for like shoes, for example, or a beer or a whiskey or anything, and then you in your head you're like, why can't they just make it available for everyone? Like here's a prime example: Deftones. I have the tequila back there that they dropped. Right. And I'm looking through the Instagram, and all I see is people bitching, like, why don't you distribute this all over the country? Why isn't it over here in Europe? Oh, you don't care about your fans. It's like, guys, it's really hard to make tequila, first of all, enough for everyone to have.
Yeah.
And then, also it creates that the hunt. Like I went on a hunt, and I thought that was fun. Like I went looking everywhere for it. But if you give it to everyone and just open it up, then it becomes like this weird overproduced thing, like the Metallica whiskey, which is like available at like the fucking supermarket, nobody really it's not special. It doesn't have a special vibe to it, I guess. Exactly. I don't know where I sit on that. Like, I guess I like limited releases, but because of the challenge.
I like it because it's like, even if me individually as a consumer doesn't end up getting that limited edition thing that I was looking for, like, one, there's always a resale market for it. You'll be able, there are people out there that are buying it with the intention to resell it. And like, I don't support scalpers. Obviously wait a couple years, until the prices become reasonable and the resale market is less full of assholes.
Yeah.
But there's a resale market for it. So I know that it's like, if I really want it, if I'm still, waking up in a cold sweat because I don't have it in my possession 2 years from now, I can find it reasonably. And two, those kinds of things work so well to drive people to certain bands or brands or products. And in most cases, especially with, like shoes and shit, things like Nike, like they don't need the additional, like push from a limited run item. But a lot of other people do, right? Like if a band does something like that, a band that's like smaller than Metallica or Deftones, for example, it's like that gives people reason to talk about that band. And all of a sudden it's like, this band who maybe was lesser known before they released their cool like beer collaboration or whatever, now has more people from a different audience looking at them. And I think that that's, obviously a good thing. Sure. So it's like, I support limited run stuff for those two reasons particularly, is that it's like, I know I'll be able to get it again if I want to. And it really is helpful in, helping smaller companies or brands grow. But I won't lie and say that there's definitely some items that I've missed out on that have made me the type of person who is like, oh, this is available for pre-order, I'm going to get the collector's edition right now.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So. I've definitely dropped way too much money on certain games. I think my wife and I dropped $150 on the Fallout 76 collector's edition just so we can get the giant helmet that comes with it. And then the game ended up being a clusterfuck.
Not great, but you have a giant helmet, so that's,
look, and you know what, man? I don't know if maybe I'm just dumb. I had a blast with it. Like my wife and I enjoyed the hell out of it, and then it kept getting better and better as they kept patching it up and releasing stuff. And the same goes for Cyberpunk. All of my friends are trashing Cyberpunk. Oh my god, the game's garbage. All the bugs and this and that. And I'm like, dude, my game crashed once and it was my fault. because I was going 260 miles an hour in a Lamborghini, and I slammed into this entire like cityscape with people and cars, and the game just went nope.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I have my issues with Cyberpunk, and it's not because it's buggy. You know what I mean? Like it's a new game, it's a new AAA game, and all this kind of shit. But it's like, dog. Okay, so not only did they delay its release by like over a year, you know what I mean? Like it was supposed to come out, and then they delayed it and delayed it and delayed it and delayed it. That is like, why you guys delayed it this many fucking times and it still came out unplayable on current gen consoles? Yeah. Like, you know, because at the time, you know, it was right before PS5 and Xbox launched, or like it was right after. It was like right after, like a month after. So I guess, you know, last gen, not playable on last gen consoles, but not playable on the consoles that most people have. Like if you managed to get a PS5 or an Xbox Series, you know, you were fine. Or if you had like a high powered PC, then like, yeah, you were fine. But if you had a PS4 or an Xbox One, it literally wasn't playable at launch. It would crash during the opening cutscene, which was just like,
it's still not available on the PlayStation Store.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah. It was. That's how bad it was. Like it was unplayable to the point where like PlayStation made all this money and they were just like, hell yeah, we just made a bunch in sales, and then had to give most of it back in refunds. So they were not happy. So that's my first issue with Cyberpunk, because it's like, don't delay something that much and then just like push it out before it's done.
But I think that had a lot to do with politics and investors. I feel like they kept delaying it because even the developer was like, nope, it's not ready. And then they were like, well, fuck you, because we got Cyberpunk Monster Energy cans coming.
Yeah, exactly. So there was definitely some industry factors that pushed its release. So there's, you know, it's like, yeah, okay, I won't hold it against them that much. But the thing that really gets me with Cyberpunk is that like it's not feature complete based off what was advertised, and that shit sucks. Like there was supposed to be like a train system, there was supposed to be this like active AI with like police interactions, there was so much shit that was advertised for that game that they were just like, nah, we're just not gonna put that in. It was like the opposite of scope creeping, right? Where it's like there's this thing, you know, for those of you watching who may not know, you know, these game development lingo, but scope creeping is when you're like, okay, here's what my game is going to be, and then the publisher or whoever gives you a bunch of money to make the game, and then you're like, oh, I need another 6 months because I want to do this thing, and then 6 months later you're like, oh, I need another 3 months because I want to do this thing, and it's like, bro, like this is not what we agreed on. You're scope creeping. You're increasing the scope of the game, you know, in an attempt oftentimes just to like keep the money coming in. But it was like the opposite of that. It was like they were like, here's this thing, huge immersive game, all these features, this is what we're doing. And then it came out and it was like, this is just a regular ass action RPG. Like there's nothing super special about this. And that was kind of the whole angle, is that it's like, yeah, this is an action RPG, but there's a ton of super cool special shit in it. And when none of that was present, and like still isn't present, and really has no plans of like being incorporated anytime in the near future, that's why I'm kind of like, yeah, fuck Cyberpunk. Not because it's not fun, because it is. It's a good game, and especially now that there's been a couple patches, the quality of life is definitely a lot better. But I'm just like, man, don't. If I fucking did a press release and was like, here's a 30-second teaser of this brutal death metal song, and you know, album's coming out in 3 months, and then was like 3 months came and was like, actually, just kidding, it's coming out in another 3 months, and then another 3 months, and then another 3 months, but you still have that 30 seconds to hold on to. Like, remember how sick that 30-second teaser was? And then finally released my album, and it was like country. I wouldn't have a fucking career. Like, why is it like, you know what I mean? And so that's kind of, it's analogous, and like I get that it's not the same thing, it's just an analogy, but I really try to like place that perspective on a lot of things. Is I'm like, what if anyone else tried to pull this shit, like fucking, you know? And so that's kind of my whole beef with Cyberpunk and CDPR.
No, I totally get it. I mean, I respect that at all. Even as a fan of the game, I respect that because I get it. It's just I guess a number of years ago, I kept getting burned by E3 trailers and teasers for shit coming out, and then it would come out and it was garbage. Like I think one of the Watch Dogs was really one of those that I was like, this is going to be the best game ever, and then came out Division was the same way. Like Division ended up being fun, but it was kind of the same thing. When I first saw that trailer, I'm like, what is this? And I just kept getting burned so much that I'm just like, just give me whatever you're making when it comes out. Like I'm not even going to get hyped about your shit until it comes out, because otherwise I'm just going to get disappointed. I'm tired of it.
Yeah. You know? And that's a bummer though, because that sets like if that's the precedent, that sucks. Like that. Like if the precedent is like, okay, I'm going to take every trailer I see with a grain of salt, like that sucks, because then when you have really cool trailers for really cool games that actually deliver on that shit, like the opportunity for hype and for like momentum is gone. Yeah. Because people are going to go into it being like, this probably isn't going to be what this game is like.
And that's definitely the mindset a lot of the times now with games. And even, I don't know, movies maybe, but like, I feel that way a lot where I see a trailer for a game, I'm like, we'll see. Yeah. That's the mentality. Like, sure. We'll see. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about music, because I have another one coming up in a bit, but Allegaeon. I mean, during this time, I know you've been busy. You did the company, the video game company, and everything. But are you guys working on new stuff?
Yeah, man. We're actually hitting the studio in just a few weeks.
Nice.
Going back out to Denver with Dave Otero over at Flatline Audio. Album is written. Everything's good to go. We're taking a very different approach to the writing process on this one. The music is still,
dubstep?
Music is still the same.
It's not dubstep?
Yeah, right. Yeah, no dubstep breaks, no country interludes.
Nice.
But it's a logical progression, you know what I mean? Like we've been doing a lot of stuff over our past couple records that are moving away from like the strictly tech death, mellow death formula that like the first 3 records kind of presented. We introduced a fucking Rush cover and like guest vocals, doing clean shit in Proponent, and then with Apoptosis, along came more progressive rock covers and more melodic interlude kind of stuff, a little bit darker, a little bit heavier, a little bit less like science-y and polished as some of the other stuff. And with this new one that I can't tell you what it's called yet, unfortunately, but with this new one, it's very much, like I said, a logical progression in that direction. Like it's super dark. It's very atmospherically, I don't want to say atmospheric, because it's like that kind of comes with the connotation of like atmospheric black metal, which is just big and spacey, and it's not that at all. But it creates a certain atmosphere that's very dark and very moody and very, very much more, I'd say, emotionally impactful than a lot of our stuff in the past.
Fitting with the times of humanity at this point.
Yeah, and that's kind of another thing, is it's like, we're pretty much ditching the like science shit, because it's just like we all kind of came to the conclusion that like it would be pretty tone deaf after everything that's happened over the past couple of years to be like, hey guys, it's fucking science. Like it's like,
unless you make a whole album about vaccines and how the science behind that.
So, I feel like we all needed this album to be a little bit more cathartic for us.
Okay.
Instead of being like, yeah, we're a death metal band that does science shit, let's just kind of do more of that because business as usual. Like,
right.
Because the past couple of years haven't been business as usual. It's been really hard, for everyone in music. And for us to, like it's like we were saying earlier, right? Like the reason people get into this kind of music, especially from a performing side, is because like we've got some shit that we need to get out. Like this is our form of expression. Like this is how we process our emotions and how we deal with life. And for us to like deny ourselves that, as musicians and as artists, after dealing with everything that came with the past couple of years, like it's it would be a disservice not only to ourselves but to the music, because it's like we're not going to write music that we don't want to, you know what I mean?
Sure,
like for the sake of preserving a branded image, like that's silly. So this album, like I said, kind of needed to be a little bit more cathartic for us, you know, drifting away from our run of the mill subject matter and diving into some stuff that's a little bit more personal, a little bit, you know, like I said, more moody, dark kind of vibes to it. But like I said, that's not to say that the music is totally different. Like it's still the same 5 dudes writing it. You know, our music has never really deviated from our core too much, but definitely is darker, definitely has, you know, some more like progressive metal parts to it, like longer passages that, you know, kind of drift away from what has pretty much been the, you know, standard Allegiant song structure of like intro, verse, chorus, guitar solos, chorus, outro type of thing. A lot of our songs have been structured like that. And so we're kind of trying to move away from that a little bit, you know, as well as make things super heavy, make things super dark, you know, also, you know, incorporate some of those softer sections, that progressive metal stuff that we've been, you know, dipping our toes into with some of these prog rock covers and, you know, incorporating in small little bits here and there on our past 2 albums. We're definitely bringing that out a little bit more to the forefront in this album. So I'm really excited for it personally. I'm more invested on a personal level in this album than I have been in the past 2 Allegiant albums. And I think that everyone in the band could probably echo that sentiment. So, yeah, very excited to get it out there.
Is there any concern because for some reason tech death, extreme metal, black metal fans tend to be the very elite kind of like, don't change your sound. So are you like worried that that's going to happen, or do you think your fans are more open-minded and are more, you know, able to accept the new stuff?
I think that ship has kind of already sailed. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like those people all jumped ship when we released a cover of Subdivisions like in 2016. You know what I mean? And since then, I think that we've kind of cultivated an audience who is a little bit more open to, you know, varied artistic expression versus just like give me the same album 5 times.
Yeah.
And honestly, man, like I don't really sweat those people anyway, because like those are the types of people who don't make or consume music. Like right. The types of people who are like super stick up their ass, elitist, gatekeepy about their opinions, and this band should sound like this forever, or this band was better when they sounded like that. Like those people don't buy albums. They don't, you know, like they don't go to shows. They just sit in their room and stream music and leave shitty comments on YouTube. Like those people are the last people I am concerned with placating.
Yeah. And if they do go to shows, they're standing in the back bitching about something.
Yeah,
like the snare. I can't hear the snare.
Yeah, those folks aren't going to shows, buying merch and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, you know, if you're the type of person who won't support a community because that entire community isn't catering to your very specific wants and needs for how it should operate, you're not really the kind of person I care about pleasing. Right. Like, you know, and it's the other thing about it is that it's like I make music because that's what I do. You know what I mean? Like I don't make music for other people. Like when it comes down to it, it's like music is my form of self-expression. When I release an album, it no longer belongs to me. You know what I mean? Like I've definitely come to terms with that a long time ago, is that it's like once it's out there, it's everyone's to do with what they will. And if they want to shit on it and pick it apart, like so be it. You know what I mean? Like you can't win them all. But when it comes down to it, it's like when I'm making music and I'm, you know, putting my heart and soul into the creative process, like I'm doing it for me. I'm not thinking about YouTube comments when I'm writing lyrics. Like, you know, so it's well, that's why your band is not successful, like to the point of, you know, Bad Bunny, bro, you know, #1 Spotify. Well, it's definitely true, man. And that's what separates a real artist to me. And I can, it's like I smell the bullshit right away when it's the other way around. You know, when a band comes out and I see, like, I get the PR emails with here's the video clip and the thing, and I play it and I'm like, they're singing about social media. I'm done. Click. Goodbye. Like, I'm not into it. It's just the kind of thing, man, where it's like, I would rather be putting my art out there to a community of people that is that it will have an effect on. You know what I mean? Like I didn't get into death metal to make money. Like, you know what I mean? Like I got into this type of music to, you know, leave a mark and, like, you know, try to express the things that are inside of me to a community of people that it will resonate with. And that's the most important part. It's like, you know, and yeah, like when you get to a point where you're touring and you're releasing albums, you're doing all this stuff, like there's expenses and there's overhead, and you need to start doing business minded things, you know, releasing merch. You know, we started a Patreon 4 years ago and caught tons of shit for it, but like now it's a standard, you know what I mean? Tons of bands have Patreons. It's like you have to start doing things, you know, with business, the business side of things in mind. But like if that's your only motivator, is to like, I just want to make music and make a bunch of money and like cater, like pander to an audience, then, you know, you're very likely not going to get very far. And I feel like even in genres that a lot of metalheads kind of write off as being like, you know, in industry ran type of things, like pop music and, you know, a lot of hip hop and shit like that. Like I know tons of people in both of those industries, and they are all extremely passionate, like extremely talented, like have just as rich of a background in music and dance and songwriting as any metalhead that I know. You know, I think that it's like without that element, like success can't be found, because it's like you said, people smell the bullshit. Like people will see a project or an artist or anything that's trying to just like capitalize and be like, get the fuck out of here. Like no one's trying to do that. And, you know, yeah, it can get to a point once you've gone through all that and are like now sitting at the top of like a record label or a distribution company or whatever it might be, that it's like, yeah, you're thinking, you know, you're being business minded. You're thinking from a perspective of like, okay, this is something I want to do, but this is also my livelihood. How am I going to make money off of this? You know, sometimes you see like flash in the pan pop stars, or, you know, like there's countless like deathcore bands, for example.
Sure.
Back when like Sumerian was doing that whole thing, maybe like 8-10 years ago, where it was just like, flash in the pan, you know, make your money and get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
You know, capitalizing will happen on anything that becomes popular. But, you know, that thing can't become popular in the first place without that element of like passion and like real investment on a human level into it. So I think that's where Allegion's at, you know what I mean? Is that it's like we have been, you know, a mid-sized band for a long time, you know, and we're always chasing, you know, more success and a bigger audience and all that kind of stuff. But we, you know, really want to just start operating this band on like that human level, where it's like we only want to make music that we all really give a shit about. And that's not to say that we haven't done that in the past, but it has sometimes been an afterthought based off of like, oh shit, well, we have this touring schedule we need to accommodate, or like, oh shit, we have these deadlines we need to meet. And now that we've had an opportunity to not have to worry about that stuff with COVID and touring being gone and all that, it's given us a chance to kind of like reassess how we make music as a group. And I think that the fruits of that labor are definitely the ripest that we've ever had. So
very cool.
Very excited.
Yeah, man, that's exciting. I'm excited to hear it. I'm going to be 100% honest. I like what you guys have done, what you've released, but I'm not a big tech death metal guy. Like, I'll listen to it and enjoy it, and then that's it. I'll hear it maybe once again, like down the road if somebody mentions it, but I'm not like, it's not my everyday playlist. And as I get older, it gets softer. So it's like, oh, what am I listening today? Oh, just some ambient soundtrack from the Utopia TV show. That's what I'm listening to.
Hell yeah. That's where it's at, man.
Yeah. So but you know, you guys are insanely talented, and I'm excited to hear that, you know, you're taking this direction, because that is something that does pull me back in, is when there's more of a personal aspect to it and like less, like for when it comes to tech death metal and also even prog metal for me, and I've said this before on the show, like I acknowledge like Dream Theater, I acknowledge how incredibly talented they are. I'm not connected to that. Like it's more of a talent show. Like, hey, look how awesome these guys are. You know what I mean? Yeah. But when I connect, like more, deeply connect with like a personal aspect of it, that's when that's when it gets multiple plays for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm excited to hear that. I'm excited to hear you guys stayed busy during the pandemic and we're getting out of it. A lot more vaccines going around. Shows are being announced. I actually added a show to my calendar for the first time in a year. I was like, ooh, Between the Bird and Me is coming to California. I'm gonna go.
Oh yeah.
So it's exciting to see that because I had a dip right in the middle of the pandemic. I gave up. I was like, I think it was like Tesseract put out a live stream. And I was watching it, and I was just like, it like hit me like a punch in the face. Like, I may never go to a show again. No. Like, this is it. Like, this is it for the rest of my life. These fucking live streams, and I hate it. And but it's starting to the light is at the end of the tunnel, as they say. So I'm excited to potentially see you guys lives, see your hear music. I'm excited for all of it, and super stoked at your success with the gaming thing, dude. The Proponent Games. I mean, not a lot of band members venture off into other businesses, especially video games. Like I don't see that often. I know a lot of band members that play video games, but not start a company. So that's awesome. Yeah. And
thanks, man.
I'm stoked that we got to do this finally. And let's stay in touch, brother. I feel like you and I can sit here and talk about Final Fantasy for 3-4 hours straight.
Dude.
You should start a Final Fantasy podcast.
I was about to say, if you ever do a video game special, make sure to let me know, because I'll be there for the whole 8 hours that it happens.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I appreciate you, and we'll be in touch.
Yeah, man, absolutely.
And so plug your socials for everybody that is watching and listening.
Yeah, absolutely. My personal socials, just Riley _McShane on Instagram. Usually the best way you can find me. Stay updated. Obviously, my band Allegaeon, spelled Allegaeon. Oftentimes followed up by an official. So Allegaeon official on Twitter and Instagram as well. Facebook, of course. And then Proponent Games up there as well. Proponent Games across all social media platforms. All three things I mentioned are definitely going to be a little more active on TikTok as well moving forward. I mean, it's fucking where it's at, man. It's where everybody's hanging out.
I started an account and I have one video on there. And I haven't followed up, but I gotta. I have one video of my grandmother reading Cannibal Corpse song titles.
That's amazing. That's fantastic.
But yeah, I definitely gotta. TikTok's where it's the fucking future, I guess.
Yeah, man. It's kind of thing where it's like I feel like a lot of people are kind of turned off by it because they're like, oh, well, you have to behave in a viral way, and I'm just not a viral person. But it's kind of thing where it's like, bro, just post the same way you would post on any other social media platform. It's like it's just another social media platform. Mm-hmm. It's really all it is. So jumping, trying to make more waves on there, make more of a presence for ourselves, myself personally, Allegaeon, as well as Proponent Games. So yeah, all three of those things, those are my main squeezes right now. I would be remiss to neglect to mention, obviously, Virulent Depravity, working on new music. Continuum.
Oh, nice.
Not really working on anything right now, but always around. And
cool.
That's it. That's all my plugs. That's all I'm doing.
Awesome, brother. Well, hey, take care of yourself. Take care of the wife and the kitty back there. And we'll be in touch, brother. Stay
Absolutely,
stay
man.
metal.
Stay metal. All right. See you, bud.